Hello and welcome everyone to our Saturday stream. I'm Josh and this is our map and image creation Fantasy Grounds Unity tutorials, demonstrations, as well as all of the image related news that we go through. And so there's been lots of updates to the system as of late, including some new ones, mainly to do with the occluders and the map making side and so on and so forth. But lots of great things that are coming out and some really massive kind of adjustments to how we interact with the image creation system. So we're going to continue that process today of going through those tools and looking at them. Also recently released this month is two Western map packs. We have an indoor and an outdoor Western map pack, which is great. So if you haven't seen those yet, certainly check those out. If you are a subscriber to the Art Subscription, you get all of those releases as they come out. That's all included in there. So we release at least two art packs a month. And of course, you get access to all the ones that have been released so far. So that's usually a great deal there. I think it's $50 a month or $5. No, $50 a year or $5 a month. Yeah, let's get that correct. All right. Well, I'm actually in the Dune rule set that's been recently released as well. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the usage of the tools and how well that we can use them to pretty much create everything we want. Now, some of the things that we're going to go over here in the beginning, we can certainly use in a multitude of different ways. You can apply these to any other process, but I recently had a couple of questions about this, so I thought I'd go over it here first in the beginning of our stream here before we actually make some actual like locations and whatnot. But if we were to jump into, and if you guys are unfamiliar with the rule set here, there are these very kind of cool crests that are created or given to us by Modiphius through the actual rule set itself. And so I'm going to go through some of the painting techniques that we can use to create our own crests or something along these lines. And then I'm going to show you guys how you can use those in other areas as well. Using the add functionality with the subtraction functionality and the overlap and all of those different ways that the painting tools can kind of interact with it. I'm also going to be using, starting right off here with the just using the innate painting tools inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity. So we're not going to be using any image-based creation at the start here, just so that we can focus more on the actual tool functionality. And I can kind of walk you guys through some of the different techniques that you can use using the grid system, the way that we can kind of lock to the grid so that you can easily manipulate the images and do lots of, anything that you kind of want to create, you are now able to inside of Fantasy Grounds, right? We can either do it with an image or we can do it just with these color fields that are kind of built in here. So if we jump in, let me just go into my images here, and I'm just going to create a new image record. And we'll close that down. And I'm just going to expand this here. And you can kind of see how these are just made up of like basic shapes. We're going to go through the basic shape kind of creation process. I'm just going to turn on my grid here. And we're going to lower down the opacity because we're actually going to be using the grid as a way for us to control, because we have a lot of shortcut keys during the actual painting process itself, so that we can use that grid system to create and maintain a little bit more control over all of these different functionalities. So you might think that creating a shape like this would be difficult, but it's actually quite easy. I'm going to show you guys how we can do all of that stuff today. And this is going to spill over, right? So if you were trying to create different types of buildings and whatnot, other things that you might want to have in your own creations and your maps, it's exactly the same techniques, and we're going to kind of use that in image-based creation as well. But let's just jump right in here. I'm actually going to turn off my stroke at first, and I'm just going to turn on my color fill. And we can leave this at white in the beginning here. We can change this color after the fact. And what we're actually going to be mainly concerned in this particular part of what we're going to be talking about here is the overlaps that we're going to be using here. So we're going to use all of the different tools up here, and the way that they interact with each other, they add to each other and subtract and so on. So let's talk about, let's close these down. This is probably the most kind of complex shape, this Harkonnen crest here. And let's zoom into this just a little bit so you guys can see it here. But we have this kind of star shape, and it's based around this circle. But we have lots of different interactive. We have these points kind of coming out to the side. And then all of these different elements we can now create inside of Fantasy Grounds. So we could even do this if we were creating like a temple or whatnot. You wanted to have it in this kind of like star shape. You could very easily do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off with a circle here, the ellipse tool. And one of the things that you guys might not realize is that we can adhere to the grid shape by holding down Control. It's going to snap. And if I hold down Shift, it'll maintain a completely circle or a perfect circle in its orientation. So we'll make it kind of a decent size here, as you can see. Now all of these tools are going to work exactly the same way. So to make this a hollow circle, right, we can now switch over to the subtraction. We're going to stay right in the same exact area here. And I'm going to just hold down Control, and that's going to snap to here. And I can also hold down the Shift key, and I can make a exact circle kind of cut out in the middle here. And depending on where I start off here, so if I start off here, you can see that I can make this a little bit larger. We can make this into any shape that we wish. Now what I can do is I can go into my add mode here, and I can begin to add in particular other elements here. So let's go into our line tool here, and we're going to start to create some points. And so I'm going to do this exactly the same way. I'm actually going to come onto the inside of this. I'm going to do this in a way that I can easily replicate this across the board here. So let's actually make this a little bit wider here. And again, I'm going to hold down Control, and this is going to allow me to snap to the grid. So maybe I'll bring this out to something like this, and then here, and then I can come over to this side, and we can do exactly the same thing. I can do here, and here all I'm doing. Actually, let's do it the same as we did on the bottom. And all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of following this guide just to show you how that we can kind of create recreate this exact element here. And again, I'm going to line it up right there. So I'm just going to hit here, and here we're going to go much higher up, and then down. And don't worry about this. We're gonna alter this as we go. We're gonna actually erase out a little bit of a circle so we get a little bit smoother of an element over here, and we can erase out the section over here as well. So again, I'm gonna come right over to this side, and you can see that this is a little bit off on this side, but that's no problem. Or maybe it's this one. We can just go into our elements over here, and we can change this. So I can just grab this, and we can move this out. And actually, what we want to do is remove that selected point. And I'm just going to bring this in to somewhere where it's about there. Somewhere similar on the same side here. And we can grab this point and move it in. And again, I'm going to hold down Control so it all snaps to the points. And so here we've got a pretty similar kind of facsimile here of what we're doing. Now let's switch back over into our painting area here. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and again switch to my subtract, and I'm going to go right down the middle here. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it out to somewhere like here, and holding down Control, I can snap into this system here, and we can erase that. You can see how easily I can begin to manipulate all of these painting tools, so it will replicate a lot of this. We have this little bit of a hook that kind of comes in here. We can also replicate that as well. All I have to do is either add to this, which would probably be the easiest way to do that. And again, I can switch over to this tool, make sure that I switch to the add element. And what I'll do is I'll just snap to the grid here. Let me just make sure that there's no stroke. Yep. And you know what I'm going to do? This looks like it's a little bit off. So I'm going to switch over, and we'll grab this. I'm just going to make sure that this all snaps right to the grid here. Move that all the way up. So we have a nice kind of clean element that we're actually interacting with. Make sure I have my add selection here. And I'm just going to click somewhere in here. And again, I'm going to just draw this out. And then I'm going to actually just do a straight shot here. And what I'll do is I'll switch over to my ellipse tool, and then we can go to our subtraction, and we can just kind of bring in this in and do something like this. And this is a little bit off here, so I can just switch over, and we can manipulate these. We have a bunch of extra ones here that we don't really need. So I'm just going to select a couple of these, and we're just going to remove these points. We don't need this one. And I'm going to bring this one in to something like that. And I could further kind of manipulate this a little bit. We could kind of come in here and smooth some of this stuff out if we so wished. You can get right in here and do as much of this kind of manipulating as you want to. Let's bring this one over to something like that. Let's make this seem a little bit more rounded. And that looks like it's a little bit out of the it's a fairly decent facsimile there, I think. And so now what we can actually do is we can go into our edit fill here. And it's a little bit wonky there, and I could go back in and readjust that as much as I wanted to. But what I can actually do is come in here and use my R, G, and B keys to change this to any color I wish. So if I wanted to make it actually a truer kind of representation of that. But what also I can do is I can go into my layers tab here, and I can grab this, and I could actually grab that color, and we could switch it right over to it. The other thing that we can do in our layers tab here, especially if I hold down shift, is I can change the size of this. I could even squash it down a little bit if I wanted to. I'll hit Control Z to kind of bring it back. So we have complete and total control over this image as we create it. And you can start to see how the image creation system inside of Fantasy Grounds is really something that is quite limitless in all of the ways that we can kind of interact with this system. And again, if I wanted to smooth out these kind of interactions here, I could come back in and grab the ellipse tool and erase these out. I can also continue to come back in here. So if I wanted to make this a little bit less, a little bit more rounded in connection with this element, so it's a little bit more of a swooping kind of thing here, we can just bring it out here a little bit. There we go. And all of this is just done completely in the tools themselves. Creating new layers, we can switch back over, and again, we can do something very similar here. I'm just going to grab the circle tool here. We're going to go into a new overlap, which this is the actual normal. And I'm just going to grab something out like this. Alt will bring it from a center kind of position. Control snap to the grid, and so we can actually come right to the center here if we so wish, and I can hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and this is going to snap to the grid as well as come out from a central kind of location, which is the easiest way to kind of see where these things are going to go and so on. Again, what I can do is I can come in and I can create all of these little star shapes that I wish. And what we can do is, let's say, for example, we want to do something that is similar with like these lines and whatnot. We can turn the fill off and we can switch over to our painting stroke. And here again, I'm going to switch this to white because I'm going to do this all in the same layer here. And again, what I can do is I can come right into the middle here and we can hold all of these and we can just drag out a nice white line. Switching back over to my layers tab, I can grab the tint And we can grab that color. So as you can see here, we can really begin to manipulate these images and create a very similar kind of facsimile of pretty much any other image that you wish. So if you wanted to come in here and create your own symbols and different types of coat of arms, or especially along the lines of something like these where we have very little visual information besides these fields of color. And you can start to think of these, and again, I can shrink this down if I wanted to. And again, I could change the shape of it, but if I hold down Shift, it'll adhere to that rigid constraints of exactly what it is. And I can also come into this side over here, and I can actually type in whatever size that I wanted this to be. So if I just want it to be like 20, and this will also, with the aspect lock ratio ticked here, it'll maintain that throughout the entire creation process. So we could actually, inside of Fantasy Grounds, create an actual replica of this without any art packages. This is just the images themselves. The only thing that you want to do is you want to think of this in terms of layers and the way that this is all going to interact together. So you can kind of layer these things out and change these around and do all of that sort of thing. We can come in and adjust a lot of this stuff after the fact, but this is a really great way for us to create, as I said before, all of these symbols and all of the stuff that we want to do here. So if we want to do these things, what we're actually going to do is use the grid system to change and create these different elements. So now, even though we have moved on here a little bit, what I can do is I can switch back to my fill, and we should be able to add in these additional elements again. And now what I do is I'm going to use this as my guide to which I'm going to actually be doing this. Okay, so it looks like we have a question here. When you manually adjust the size, are the numbers representing grid squares? Yes, they are. Yep, exactly what it is. And what we can actually do is, if we want to have more precise control, we can actually come in and change the grid size. So if I make this double, and when we switch back over, you'll see that this number has now doubled, giving me a lot more control over this. So we can make sure during your creation process, you don't necessarily adhere to a specific grid size. You always want to be able to adjust that grid size for your creation process and then put it back into whatever it is after the fact. So if I was just creating symbols, obviously once I was done, I would just turn off the grid, and so that it wouldn't be a visible kind of thing for an image, something like this. But yes, using that grid system and jumping back and forth between the different amounts is kind of crucial to a lot of the creation process. So if we jump back in now, and I'm just going to grab this, and this is going to make sure that I have this exactly set up as I had before. Let's turn off, we have our fill here, and we have no stroke. Let's turn our stroke off. I think it's actually, let's go back to our fill here. We should be able to add into this, let's turn our grid back on so that we can actually see what we're kind of doing here. And again, what I can do is, okay, so if we do a circle from a central point, a lot of these shortcut keys are kind of synonymous across multiple different elements here, or different programs. So I'm going to create a new painting layer so we can just kind of demonstrate this over here. So if we hold Control, that's going to snap to the grid. So whatever grid that we have snapped to. And you can see here too, if we switch over to here, this is going to snap right to the middle or to the edge. And so when we snap to the grid with Control, it's always going to either be the center, a halfway point, or the full-on grid itself. If I hold down Shift, and I can hold down all of these combinations together too, a Shift will maintain a perfect circle, and it's the same with the ellipse as well. And if I hold down Alt, it's going to come right from the center. So holding down Alt and Control, I can guarantee that I'm going to snap to the grids. And holding all three of those buttons, I can come right out from the center here and pull an exact circle. So Alt is the center, coming right from wherever you click. Control is snapping to the grid, and Shift will maintain a perfect ratio for a perfect circle. And the same is true of the square. So if I hold down Control, it's going to snap to the grid. If I hold down Shift, it's going to maintain a perfect square. And if I do Alt, it'll be right from the center here. And these are kind of crucial when you're doing all of these. Things change a little bit when we do the line tool. And so the line tool, holding down Control, will again snap to the grid system. But if I hold down Shift, let's start a line. I'm going to hold down Control. If I hold down Shift, what it'll actually do is it'll snap to 90 or 45 degrees. So I can actually create like circle elements, and triangles and perfect 45-degree lines and 90-degree lines. And let's just get rid of that whole layer here. And now let's go back into our this lower painting here, and I'm going to switch down. I'm going to grab my line tool here. So we're gonna draw out a little section from here. So because I've changed this grid system, I can now come right from the middle here. I'm gonna make sure that I have this added. And what I'll do is I'm gonna hold down Control, and we'll go to somewhere like here. And I want to do it, we'll do all of the sides first here. And all I'm doing is adding to the shape that is already here. I think we'll bring it to something like there. And then I'm going to actually change my grid size here to back where it was so that I have a easier time kind of finding the middle here, which should be right here. And I'm just going to use this point. Holding down Control, I can snap to the grid. So I'm just going to snap and snap. And that's going to be a little bit wide, but I can close that up here. I can do that in the actual adjustments after the fact. And so again, I'm going to come down here. This is about the middle. So, and even if it's not, I can change this after the fact, which is one of the great system benefits from how this is kind of set up. And you can see that that's a little bit off there, and we'll fix that in a moment. I think that this one should be, I think this one's completely off here, so let's just change it. And again, what we can do is we could move these wherever we want to. I think we'll actually move them in. Let's make them a little bit narrower. Seems to be a little bit more accurate. And again, we can come in here and make any sort of full layer adjustments that we wanted to. So we could move this around and do all of these things. So that's kind of like a brief overview of the actual image interactions and how we can kind of create these different symbols and whatnot inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity with no art packs, just using the tools themselves. So when we move over here, we can actually start to create something of our own, maybe a little bit more of a complex kind of shape. And we'll kind of show you how you can interact with these systems. What we've done is we've created all of these and done all of our color in the Layers tab here. And we can continue to do that, but we can also do them individually as well. So I'm just going to create a new folder. We'll put that right in there. Turn that off for a moment. We'll create a new painting layer out here. So let's we can start off with maybe a rectangle. And again, I'm going to start off with just with white here, and we can adjust this after the fact. We'll create a new overlap. Again, I'm going to hold down Control and snap to this grid. Let's make it a little bit of a rectangle here. I'm going to actually bring this down to here, and then we can grab a circle. Let's go to Subtract. We can go right into the center area here, and we'll hold down Alt and Shift, maybe even Control. We can snap this right to the grid, maybe something like this. And then what I can do is I can actually come in and we can bring this down. So we have this nice circle, this hole right in the middle of our painting layer here. Switch back over to my tool. We can go into the Add section here. And again, I can come right out from the center here, holding down Alt. And I'm going to hold down Alt and Control and Shift. And we're going to drag out a circle from the center. Now let's switch over into our erase mode, and we'll grab these rectangles, and maybe we'll do something like this. I think what we can do is let's grab this guy. We're still in our erase, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm just going to hold down Control, click once, and drag out a line, and then I'm going to hold down Shift, and that's going to make sure that I maintain 45-degree angle there. So you can see that I have 3 in there. So I can do exactly the same over here. So I'm going to hold down Control, click once, and then hold Shift. Hold Shift, and we're going to bring this up. That should be working there. How very curious. Let's see that again. It doesn't seem to want to be doing it right that second. Let's try another section here. And we'll hold down Shift. I wonder if we can do it in this direction here. Doesn't seem to want to do it on that edge. Isn't that crazy? Let's go in, and what I can actually do is I just have to make one more occluder, and then I can just drag this and change it that way. So all I have to do is actually, what I'll do is I'll add a little element here, which will actually add in a couple of occluders. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to remove that point and this point. And then I can just move this over, and snapping to the grid, I can do exactly the same kind of scenario here. So we're going to move this down. And I think that this one should be here. No. Let's see here. This is the middle. Yeah, that should be right. Now these different elements, I believe, are separate. So if I hold down R, G, and B, I can actually change the color of this. So if I wanted to make this, for example, a little bit more red, let's make it a little bit of a darker red. And then I can change the color of this one. Maybe we'll make this, let's actually make this like a turquoisey kind of color. Something similar to this. I think what we can do too, let's make some rounded kind of sections from here. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to hold Alt and Shift from here. We might as well snap to the grid so that we can kind of do this the same on both sides. And what if we come in here and we can actually rotate this? And I think what we'll do is we'll add in some other adjustments here. And now we can go, let's add in another element in the background. And I think what we'll do is we'll do something like this. And now holding Shift, Control, and Alt from the center here, I'm actually going to draw out, nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do an ellipse tool here. Let's make this a bit bigger. So what I can actually do is hold down Control and adjust with my mouse wheel for a larger line here. And then I can make a smaller one. And now we can switch over to our subtraction mode here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rounded section from right in here. So I'm going to go right into the middle here, something like this. Hold down Control, Shift, and Alt. And I can switch back over to this particular tab here, and I can let's see, maybe we'll make this a little bit bigger in the background here. Actually, you know what? Maybe we'll make it something like this. And we can do some adjustments over here. Maybe we'll make it a little bit golden. And I think we can do some adjustments here as well. It's a little bit green, but thinking about maybe we'll make this a little bit opaque, and let's actually make this a little bit smaller on the inside, something like that. Let's make this less green. Maybe something like here. But we'll make it a little bit darker. And then we can create a new painting layer and put this even behind. I think we'll do something in the background here. So let's switch back over. Let's turn off our stroke and turn our fill back on. And I'm going to be using the line tool, and I'm going to hit Control, and I'm just going to start snapping to the grid here. Oh, I don't want it to be a race. And I'm just going to follow the same pattern that I did on the other side here. And we can move over to here. And this is where we're using our grid system here. Maybe we'll do it like there. And we can bring this all the way down. And I'm just going to match this up on both sides here. So we're going to go straight across to like there. And then here. Let's see. That's going to be... And this, we're going to have to move this one. This one should be... here, something like this. And again, I think we'll switch over to my circle. And I'm going to erase out this section here, I think. So what I'll do is I'll just bring it down to something like here. And we'll erase that out. We'll kind of pull that out to there. I think we can come in here. Let's do... Let's not go all the way down. Let's do it to like this. I think we do want to do something maybe there. Yeah, we'll do something like that. Maybe elongate it a little bit. Now this will automatically snap to the grid as you move it. If you don't want it to, all you have to do is hold down Control while you're doing it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we can change its color to whatever we wish. Maybe we'll do it the same color as this. And we can actually, one of the great things about putting something into a folder like this, let's turn this back on so I can kind of show this here, is that if it's inside of a folder, we can manipulate this all as one. It becomes like almost like it's its own layer here. And so what we can actually do is do the exact same thing here. We'll create a new folder. Close that up, and now what we can do is if we hold down Shift, we can shrink that down all together. And if we're holding Shift, it'll maintain all of the size ratios. Otherwise, we can do all kinds of manipulations with it here. And what I can actually do is, let's say, for example, I want to separate these lines again. I can come into my painting tab here, and I can double click this, and it will select all of those things. And which I can now move. Maybe we'll move it down. So we'll do something like this. And again, I can hold down Control to snap to the grid if I want to, but I don't have to. Or maybe what we'll do is, you can see how easy it is to kind of manipulate these things. Like we could even delete that. Put this back. And anything that's on its own layer, so if we come into this and we say, oh, any one of these elements that are on its own layer, we can come in and do those adjustments as well. So much fun. So that's just some of the really basic kind of functionality that you have inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity with all of these map making tools. You can make any shape that you wish and kind of jump around, and you have complete control after the fact. So you can manipulate all of these things and change all of these things. So even in this one, for example, if we decided that we wanted to make this kind of mimic what's going on here, we can actually just grab this. And do lots of cool stuff. So make sure that you, when you jump in with all of these different tools and whatnot, you can really start to see how they're all going to interact together. And in the same kind of thought process, by putting them into folders together, you're basically combining layers so that we can interact with them all at the same time here. Maybe we will something like this. You can do so many cool things. And again, if you want to have more precise control, let me hit Control Z here. We can change this. Let's bring this all the way down to like 10, for example. And you can see zooming in here. Now I can snap to the grid, and let's say I want to just take out a very thin kind of section of this. I can, well, I want to make sure I have this selected. So just manipulating the grid system here, I've now changed my ability to actually have precise kind of control over what I'm doing here. And you can duplicate these layers as well and manipulate them further. So if I were to duplicate this layer, for example, and we can come back into this tab, and maybe we'll flip it upside down. Making even more complex shapes quicker. And we can rotate it and whatnot. Change its size. So that it really becomes like this rather intuitive kind of creation process as you begin to manipulate these images. And it's super fun too. And one of the great ways that you can kind of do this, for example, let's say that you do a lot of complex kind of interactions on this side. Um, and what I'll actually do is, let's switch over to our painting tab here, and I'm actually going to erase half of this. I'm going to hold down the control and we'll snap to the grid here. We'll erase half of this image that we have over here. And we can kind of come in and you can actually use the erase tool as well. So you can, especially if you are a little bit trying to create custom shapes a little bit more dramatically here. But let's do some more kind of complex kind of stuff here. Maybe what we'll do is make this like a nice point. We can even mimic it a little bit here. We'll delete that section. That. And we can bring this back in so it's not sticking out like this. And what I'll do is I'll duplicate this layer, and then we'll switch over to this tab, and I'll flip it the other way, and then we can line it right up on the other side. We'll put it in its appropriate spot. And again, these are all in the same folder now, so we can now come in here and interact with this all as one unit. Very cool stuff. So do you guys have any questions about any of that? It's all pretty self-explanatory, I think. Using the additional features of the add, the subtract, the different shapes, using the shortcut keys to manipulate the images in a way that seems a little bit more intuitive. And you can kind of create all of these different elements that kind of work together, especially when you think about it in the different terms of the actual tabs that you're working in. So using the Layers tab to interact with it as a whole, as if it was one single image, no matter how many different images that you have placed on there, and changing all of those different parameters in such a way that you can manipulate the image into the final outcome that you kind of have in mind, while maximizing the usage of the tools to make it as easy on you as possible. So let's jump right in and begin to use that in exactly the same kind of way, but we can start to use it with some of the images as well. Oh, and one more thing before we move forward, because we're using this all in the painting system with the layers and the fill tabs and whatnot, we can now instantly create any particular type of layer into an effects. So if you were going to use some additional kind of stuff like this inside of this, maybe we're going to use like parchment or whatnot, right? So as we do this, you can see that it kind of creates that kind of texture on there. And if we pull up some of these other ones like this, you can see that there's a little bit of a texture on there and whatnot. So you can kind of replicate that. So what I can actually do is, let's delete that one, but let's say that I'm going to do it from this particular image here, which is just these elements. But let's use this one. Or we can even, we'll use the background one first. So what I can actually do is push this button which says create effects layer using painting as mask. So boom, we can create that and then assign to it like parchment, and you can see this is going to create a mask that's going to fit in that perfectly. We can kind of put that behind there, especially if we're going, we want to create like textural kind of elements for our different images. So feel free to again, maximize all of that usage, change some of this stuff so that it's going to work out. And don't forget, we can also fade out elements as well. So if I wanted to come back into my painting tab here, I could actually, begin to fade this out. We'll have to turn off the parchment here to kind of show it, but we'll have to make some adjustments up there, I guess, for the fade. Fade works best for some of these kind of elements here, like this. You can see you can create some really cool kind of symbols and whatnot. So just think about all the different elements inside of your games where you always thought, oh, I wish I could have a symbol for this particular group, or even to create symbols for your maps themselves. You can get right in there and now create all of your own right inside of the system itself. So really cool stuff. But as I said, let's I'm going to close this down here. We'll create a new image record here. And we can begin to use exactly the same kind of thought process in creating what should we create? I'm kind of thinking like a building, for example. Again, I'm going to lower down the opacity of this just so it's not, we can still use it, but it's not going to be too distracting for our actual images itself. We'll open up, oh, we don't want those assets, we want these ones. Why don't we go into, we have these desert ruins, we got some nice brushes and whatnot. We can start to make some of these elements into it as well. So here we have some nice floors. I believe that these should all be, this floor should be working with the fill system. Let me just double check, make sure I have the correct ones loaded. And switch this over to here. Yeah, that should work fine. This isn't the one that I have updated, but it'll work fine. And we have a whole bunch of different decorations and stuff that we can kind of add in as we go. But we're going to use this fill, and we can use one of these walls as well. We'll do something like, let's do something like this for our stroke. And so what we're going to do is, as we begin to pull out these images, we're going to actually start creating the shape. We're going to make a really interesting shaped, I guess we'll do like some sort of desert temple or something. And we'll begin to build out all of these complex systems. We can do corridors and different room shapes and so on, right with exactly the same kind of system that we were just using here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to start off using the rectangle here. And again, I'm going to hold down Control, and that's going to snap to my grid. And I'm just going to start to pull out something like this. I'm actually going to change this floor. Hit Control Z. Let's do something that gives us a little bit more contrast. So I'm just going to type in stone floor. All right, so we got some these ones. Let's do something like that's a little bit too natural. These ones are from the Western. This one's from, I guess we'll use, we can do just something like this, and then we'll change its color a little bit. So let's do that. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit more red here. Maybe something like that. Well, actually, you know what? We can change the color after the fact. We can do it on the fill. And I'm going to do a mitered corner here so we have nice sharp corners. All right, so now what we're actually going to do is I'll hold down Control, and we're going to snap to the grid here. So now we have a nice kind of contrasty kind of element here. And what I'm actually going to do is just jump over to our autofill here. And I'm going to hold down G and B and just kind of lower that down. We'll change this a little bit here. Something like this. This should work. This will give us a good kind of representation here. This is getting a little bit distorted on the edges here, but we'll work it all out. So one of the things that has to happen in order for us to add properly to it is we're going to have to grab our selection tool, and you see this is going to match this up to exactly what we've ever changed it to. So now when we switch to the Add tool, we can now begin to manipulate this image in exactly the same way as we did in the other one. So here we have all of this, and Again, I'm going to hold down Control, and we're going to add in some elements here. You can see that that's going to, and even if this is not lined up perfectly, that's fine because we can come back in and change this after the fact. And so maybe we want to create a nice little rounded element down here. Again, we're just going to switch. We're going to have everything all set up in the same exact parameters as we did before. And here I can hold down Alt, Shift, and Control right here in the middle. And we can start to change this out here a little bit. And again, what I can do is I can switch back over. And I'm just going to grab this and snap that over here. It's a little bit wonky right there. We'll just fix that. And again, I'm just going to grab this and drag this over until it's appropriate for the other side here. And I can grab all of this, for example. And we can actually get rid of this one. So let's remove that piece. And I can move this over. So one of the things that we can do is we don't have to be completely precise in the creation process. We can come back in after the fact and fix all of that stuff, which is great. So now let's switch back over. Now we got some of this switched or kind of like fixed in whatever we want to do. Let's create, we're going to add again, but I'm going to do another ellipse, like a big rounded section right here. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle of what this is. And again, we could come in here. And we know that it's 20 wide, so we know that that if we go 10 in the middle here, it's going to be just about the correct amount. So again, let's make sure we have our ellipse selected. And I'm going to come right up in here, and I'm just going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and we're going to drag out another section here. See, we're going to add that right to there. This time I'm going to switch to my Subtract tool, and again, we're going to go right into the middle of this. And I'm going to subtract out a center. I can switch back over to my ellipse and make sure that we have our add section here. And again, let's do a little bit of a bit coming off of this way. But before we actually let's do something a little bit fun with this first. So like we did with the other one, what we can actually do is grab these pieces. So let's say we want to come out here and I'm going to hold down Control while I do this just so it kind of snaps. We'll make like a star-shaped place over here. I'm just going to do not every other one. Let's I'll hit Control Z, put that where it was, but like this one. And you can see that this is a little bit off here. So all we have to do is make our adjustments here because we didn't do that one. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, and we're going to do this one. I guess we should do it from here. Let's do it from here, and then especially if we want to try to maintain it to be somewhat. Let's see, that's going to be here. So that's too far out. And let's do like a central kind of section down and through here too. So we're going to go back in here and we're going to go to our add. And what I'm actually going to do again is I'm going to hold down Control to snap to the grid. And it looks as though that if we make too much adjustments, it doesn't want to add in after the fact here. But what I can actually do here is we can switch over and we can just do it manually here. So all we have to do let's bring this in, snap that to the grid. And let's see if we can add to it now. If not, that's fine because I can just kind of paint in. Let me move these up to something like here. And if you ever run into this problem where you have an element and you want to add in an additional element and it doesn't seem to function properly, all you have to do is turn off your stroke. And then once this is kind of in place here, I'm just going to go to a rectangle and I'm just going to actually draw in a little section to kind of cover that up. And this looks like it's just, yeah, no, actually that's good. That's cool. I'm going to drag this down here. See what happens if we close that and reopen it. And if we switch back over, and I'm going to grab this, and let's see if we can add to this down here. Yeah. I guess you just need to close it and reopen it. And now let's do another kind of neat section down here. Actually, let's do I'll add in another like large kind of rectangle, and then we'll switch here. We'll go to the subtraction mode, and again I'm going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and I'm going to do something out here. I'm going to do a rather large circle here, and I just want to kind of circle this out like this to give this kind of element here. Whoop. Let's do it here. I kind of like how this is, so let's accentuate this a little bit. Create some really interesting kind of corners here. I think what we'll do is let's get rid of this now. Let's redo this. This seems as though it is all part of it. It's just we have a little bit there. So I guess we'll leave that there. And again, I'm just going to grab, I'm going to make a circle from somewhere like here. Well, then I'm going to grab these, hold down Control, and snap to the grid. add some corridors here. You can see how quickly you can start to build this stuff up and change this. And we can actually come back in here and maybe increase the size of these squares a little bit. If you ever do this, if you ever make any adjustments, when you come back in order to add to it, you're going to have to re-grab this, and this is going to recalculate these things so that it will now add to it properly. So let's now grab over here, and we can actually, right at this point, again, I'm going to hold Control and Alt, and I'm going to bring out like an ellipse. Maybe we'll do another one too, like here. And we can actually create some little, well, we want to do that subtraction here. Oh, that's an interesting. Somehow filled in all of our, but it won't affect our map at all. Do this. You can see that our occluders, when we generate them, it'll generate all of these. I wonder what happens if we delete those. Interesting. Yeah, so for some reason it's filled in that in the background, but that's fine. Because when we generate our line of sight, no one's going to be able to see into those sections anyway. And if we, I wonder if we can, yeah, they're like, separate little elements. All right, well, let's go in. We can actually come in now and do some subtraction elements here. So let's do this. I wonder what happens if we do it in here. Look at that. Interesting. Okay, so now that we've created a very complex kind of system here pretty quickly, you can kind of see how you can begin to build out any shape that you wish to, going back and forth between the add and all the other elements that we kind of do. And one of the great things about this system as we create it is we can always switch back over. We can do it from a couple of places here, but we can duplicate all of these selected walls. So if we were to double click on this, for example, we could duplicate all of these as walls. We can also go into this particular element here, and we can just do this, and it will generate all of these things for us. We're going to delete a couple of these things here because we don't want them. And then we just need to connect them, which these will snap right together. But we have a complete line of sight transition from what we've painted into what we have here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll start to create this and build this out into all kinds of different environmental stuff here, which should be super cool. It should also be noted too that you can really cool kind of functionality here. Let's put all of this into one folder here. We can come back now into here, and even on a large scale, something like this, we can now rotate this. So I'm going to hold down Control so we can just kind of do it. So maybe we want to do this at a little bit of an angle, something like this. This is going to, because we've got our line of sight there, if we switch back over, you can see it's going to maintain that line of sight in exactly the same kind of ratio as we did with our rotation here. Doing things at an angle can be a little bit tricky at times, just because there's a lot more added. The rectangle doesn't have like a rotationary kind of construct, so we can just create stuff and then rotate it. So we can do these cool kind of strange juxtapositions here, where the angle of it seems like a little bit off or whatnot. We can also, in this particular tab here, and I'm just going to duplicate this really quickly, and we'll hide that just for demonstration, is that we could even squash this down and create what kind of feels like an isometric view of the environment. And you can see it even kind of works with the texture on the floor and whatnot as well. If you switch back over to here, we can change the grid to this one, and we can actually line this up and create a completely hexadecimal kind of system, not hexadecimal, a completely isometric view of a dungeon that we just created on a very flat kind of environment. So this is another really cool kind of aspect that you can kind of work with here. And again, because we've done all that line of sight, it's all going to be set up just like that, which is a really cool thing that you can kind of do depending on how you want to play and what you want it to actually kind of work as. But this is still a fairly functional map. There are some adjustments that you might have to do as it kind of goes around, but you can certainly do that, and it'll take a little bit of an adjustment. All you have to do is with the grid, for example. Yeah, I can put a test guy on it, sure. Is you just come in and with the actual grid itself here, what you want to do is we can switch over to mouse mode here, and you just want to well, it's probably going to be easier just to, I think we have to turn off the aspect lock ratio, and I think it's going to be about 100 wide, and that looks like it's going to be, lining this up is going to probably be the most difficult here. And maybe even like 200 wide, something like this. We'll have to mess around with that. Looks like it needs to be rotated a little bit here too. So I'm going to hold down Control and just rotate that to line up with that grid system. And that should be a fairly close facsimile. Sure, let's let's turn on our player view and line of sight. And we'll grab somebody from the combat tracker. Let's rotate them here around a little bit. So you can see it's a great facsimile of an isometric dungeon. What you want to do is you want to do a flat version of whatever you're trying to create. Try to keep it all fairly consistent, create all of your line of sight, and then rotate it and do all of that stuff after the fact. So you can see here, because the line of sight is already all set up and it works quite well. Again, sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a switch there, and decorations obviously are going to not quite work as well. But for a complete environment like this, it works pretty well. And here we have the original. Let's turn that off. Just like that. And because of the grid system has changed, right? You can still use your lights and whatnot. So as this guy's lights are, as I said, it's not going to be completely perfect, but it's a pretty good facsimile. Great. Well, I'm going to take a quick short break. Unless you guys have any, do you guys have any questions before I go refresh my beverages here really quickly? All right. Well, if you guys will just hang out for a few moments, I'm going to take a short break. Um, Bruno, what I did was here I can kind of do this quick. It's really quickly a really super easy demonstration here. I'll do it again really quickly here. Let's turn all this stuff off, and I'll just delete this. So we made a regular map, something like this. We generated our line of sight by going in here and just clicking on the duplicate paint layer as walls. Made all of our line of sight that way. And then with it all in a folder, I just duplicated the entire folder. And then we will hide this one. We switch over to our Layers tab. And with this selection, everything in the same folder, all I have to do is just squash it down to something like this. And then hold down Control so that I can rotate it to kind of line up with the grid that I set up. So you see here you want this to kind of line up with the lines. And then you have, bam, a completely functional kind of isometric map from your regular top-down one that you've created with your painting tools. And then because we already did our line of sight, when we switch over, you can see it's all lined up perfectly. And that's it. The real kicker here, this needs to get adjusted a little bit more to line up more perfectly with the grid system here. So we want to get it somewhere. Whoop! I want to hold down Control. Want to get it somewhere so it kind of lines up with all of the grid as best as possible. Adjust all of the. So you want to try and get your grid. The biggest problem is getting your grid correctly, and your grid is going to be this diamond shape, and it's going to be longer than it is tall, like this. But it's pretty simple. Great. Well, I'm going to take a really quick break. I'll be back in just a moment. So if you guys just want to hang out, and then we will continue on. So what we'll actually do when I come back is we're going to jump into this, and we can actually delete that now. We'll start to change all of these different parameters. Get to work on it here. So I should switch my grid back here. All right. So if you guys want to hang out just for a minute, I will be back in a moment. So thanks so much. Alrighty, and we're back. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Let's continue on this journey here. I think what I'm actually going to do is, when we jump in here, I'm actually going to switch over to my painting here, and I'm just going to darken these up so that we know that they're empty. We could actually probably, you know what, it would be even better than doing that? I can just make them invisible, right? With the alpha. Oh, I see. So yeah, we got to darken them. That's fine. You know what this looks like? I just noticed this looks like Squidward. If you guys ever watched SpongeBob, it's going to be our Squidward temple. I think I think this needs to get moved over just a little bit. I think it'll be fine. All right, well let's start decorating this up. Add in some lots of cool features. We can do this in a couple of different ways. I think I'm going to try and do it all on one painting layer here. I'll be a little bit conscientious about the way that we layer it, so that we don't run into too many problems having to undo and redo certain elements here. What do you think the theme of this place should be? I think we can go into our desert ruins here, and let's look at some of these decorations that we can kind of place around. These might be pretty good here. The first thing that I think I'm going to do is, before I go too much further, is I'm going to do some changes on the floor here. We'll grab some of these like textures and whatnot. We could even do something like this. Let's see how it looks. Let's switch over to our stamp tool. Drag in something like this. We have some of these other elements, but I think we'll do some different. These ones are okay over here, but I think I'll do something that's just a little bit less of a textural thing. Yeah, totally, doesn't it? It looks. Yeah, I can see a skull too. We could make this into a skull. Maybe we'll just change this out a little bit. I'm gonna hold down Control and just drag this out. We'll make that a little bit wider, and then we can bring this out a little. We'll just remove that one. Make kind of a cool skull shape. Maybe we'll do like a raised platform up here. We can add in maybe like an altar or something. Maybe we'll make this less round down here. I'm just going to hold down Shift and select all these, and then we can kind of move this in. I guess we should have moved that one too, so let's do that again. We'll change it up there a little bit. I can even back this off a little. I think we don't need that one. Just keep that kind of square. We don't need that one. Oh, and alter where the nose should be, like here? Or maybe a pit. Maybe we'll do a pit there. All right, let's grab some stuff. I think I'm gonna do. Let's go to maybe some. We'll do some sand in some of the areas. I'm actually gonna lower down the opacity a little bit here, so we can kind of build this up. Take care, Chaotic Good Gaming. Thanks for joining us today. I think I will go into the winter art pack and we'll grab some of this stuff. And what I'll do is I'll lower down the opacity and we'll change the colors here a little bit. It's good to do some color variations here. You can even do it kind of large, and you don't have to worry about it kind of going over the walls a little bit either. It just kind of will add to a lot of the elements here. And we can make it a little bit more orangey. We might even want to make it like a little bit gray. Do a little bit darker. You'd be surprised how much just a little bit of color variation and whatnot. And I'm going to come in. I'm going to move some of these off of the sandy area. A little bit of color variation can dramatically kind of change just the feel of a particular environment. Now these might seem like a little bit inconsequential, but you wait until we add in all of our shadows and whatnot. You'll see quite a varied elements there, which are quite good. We can grab some of these. We have some nice ones from like this kind of stuff. I'm thinking what we'll do is I think we can actually just do something like this. We might want to, I'm going to turn this off and just the width here. I'm going to change, wait, let me, let's see. So it's going to be the height that I'm actually changing. I'm going to line this up. And then I'm going to change the height here to maybe something like, we'll just adjust this until we kind of get it right. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Maybe we'll just change the angle here a little bit too. To maybe like, that's interesting. There we go. And we'll just stamp this like right here. And this will be like this raised platform here in the middle, and it can go around too. So what do you think we should have up in here? And while you guys are thinking about that, I think I'll start to create like, we can do like a nice nose shaped pit like right here. So what I'm actually going to do, the way I'm going to create this is we'll turn the stroke off, but again, we're going to go back into something like this. And we'll make this I think we'll do like a dark color in here. We'll go a little bit darker than that even. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to draw out, and I'm doing all this with my mouse, so it might be a little bit wonky, but we'll see here if I can do this. Oh, I don't want it to be, nope, don't want to do that. We want a new creation thing here, so we want to set it to normal. I'm just going to draw this out here. It's pretty wonky. I don't want to have redo that. I don't want to have a stroke on it. So what I'll actually do is let's move it up here a little bit. what I'm thinking is we can have this will be like maybe a platform that they come out, and then we can come in. You see we have a lot of lines here. So what I'm actually going to do is let's see if we can simplify this. Yeah, this way we can kind of change it here a little bit. I think we might even actually add another one here. We'll make this a little bit more of a normal kind of platform. I'm actually going to fade this edge out, so I don't need it to be super precise. I think what I'll do is I'll move this over and then this up. And we can switch over into this one, and then I'm just going to hold down F and kind of fade out those edges there. Maybe we'll make this a bit bigger now. To make this a little bit larger, we can expand out the fade a little bit more. And I think we can actually come in here and maybe I can add in a couple more elements there. So I'm just going to grab this. Should be able to grab that. Yep. Just adding some more of these points here so we can smooth some of this stuff out a little bit. I guess we won't try to. We can actually do a bunch of different stuff in the way that we kind of interact with this. And let's add in a little bit over here. It's probably a lot easier to do this and then fade it out, I would suggest. Keep it pretty rough looking. So do you guys have any ideas what we should put over in this area? We should do like some decorations down here for teeth too. we can come over here. This seems to be not quite dark enough. We can make this a little bit darker. Yeah, maybe something like that. Maybe we'll decrease that fade a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. We could do little cracks coming off of this too. We could even paint in some stuff very faintly on the bottom. Let's type in like this. Lower down the opacity a lot, so it's very, very subtle. So I think what I'll do is maybe we'll do like I said, some raised platform over here, and then we can. This will be like some sort of sacrificial area. We can do it a couple of different ways, really. Or maybe we should do. What do you think? Or should we do like a magic circle? Maybe we'll do both. We'll do like a raised platform and then like a magic circle. So I think what we'll do is we can use just like a stone element. We could create a few different layers, almost like steps going up. And then I'm going to change this stuff. Do something that's going to work pretty good here. I might make that a little bit bigger. And I'm using the same floor that is already down here. And what I'll do is I'm going to just kind of drag in through here. We'll just do like a maybe we'll do it. Should we do it rectangular or circle? I think we'll do it right here. Whoop, I don't want to do add. I want to do a new one here. And if I'm a little off, that's okay. I can just come in here and double click this and I can move that particular element. Line it right up. And I can also grab some of these and move them out here. And these aren't really going to look raised yet until we add in our shadows and whatnot. And now I'm going to go into the spell templates. We have a whole bunch of different ones, and I like to use these sometimes just to add into maps as you can use something like this or whatever to make like this magical kind of circle. This one's a good one too. But we also have, not in our brushes, but in our decorations, there's a whole bunch of generic ones. Which you can use as well. And the brushes are more for like stone walls and whatnot. But I think I'll grab something like this. And we can, I'm going to lower down its opacity. We can change its color too. Maybe we'll take some of that green away. We'll make it a little bit more something like this. Let's grab some candles and place them around. Let's see what else we have here. type in alter. Let's see what we got. Maybe we'll just do like, actually, let's go into our the desert art pack. Nope, we don't want a decal art pack. I think what we'll do is maybe we'll do like these natural kind of rock elements. Whoop. Maybe. And I think we'll move them a little bit over here though. I think we'll change the shape of this a little bit. Maybe this will be like a holding area for people who would be sacrificed. But kind of adds to the whole shape of everything. Yeah, that's cool. Excellent. Now let's start to build in some of these other elements in here. What else do you think, what else do you guys think might be in this particular area? Do some of these torches around. Oh yeah, sure. So the question is, can you show how to make the faded texture around this border? So all you have to do, any fill texture that you use, any sort of fill texture, you just have to go into the Edit Fill tab and hold down F, and then use your mouse wheel, and you can fade out the edges. And you can do it with any fill texture. So I could even do it with all of this, for example. And let's see what else. Why don't we add in, before we go too much further, let's add in some shadow content. So I'm actually going to grab this painted layer, and I'm going to go into the Effects tab here. I'm going to create a mask, and we're going to make this adjust colors. Lower this down here a little bit. And then what I'm actually going to do is go to Hide Area, and I'm just going to kind of drag out the center of these areas here. I'm going to blur these out. And this is going to create like a little bit of a ambient kind of shadow off of some of these areas here. And I'm not going to do this very precisely. I'm just going to kind of do it like this. We can fade this out quite a lot here. We might even want to make this a little bit darker. Hmm. Adjust some of these colors in here. We'll put that up above, so anything that we put in underneath will kind of be painted in underneath some of these adjustments. And we can actually come in here and let's add in a little bit around these too. Accentuate that a little bit more. Make sure we have some shadows kind of coming off of these rocks. And we'll paint in some additional ones as well. We might even want to, let's remove it in here so we can see some of that stuff. Yeah, cool. Starting to look pretty good. Now you can see that these little minor variations in color down here have begun to really add to the complexity of the image. All right, so let's see here. Let's add in some additional kind of elements here. Yeah, the Dungeon of the Laughing Skull. Let's actually go into our dungeon art pack. Got some cool columns we might want to use. Oh, let's put some urns around. And we can actually paint in a couple of these guys too, these skeletons. Maybe we'll do this like a statue over here. We should probably put some base down first. We could do a different kind of fill element. Let's turn the stroke off. Well, no, actually, you know what? Let's keep that. We could do more chains and stuff around, actually. Which might be kind of cool. But we should probably add in all of our floor kind of elements first. And we should also go back into here. And let me add in a little bit. Give this a little bit of a raised feeling here. Do a little bit off the sides of these candles. Hmm. Actually, you know what? Let's do like a wooden platform here and then put that statue on top. Something like this. And I'm going to change its color here a little bit. And we can go over to our here, and we can turn the fill off now. We still have this chain. Do like a chain border around the outside of that. think we should do something in each one of these little areas here. Whoops. We're doing this all in one layer here. I think that's good for there, I guess. What else do you guys think we should add into here? I'm actually going to go switch back over to this. I'm going to do some, I want to do like some chains, kind of just like something like that. I think I'd do them a little bit larger. And the way I'm doing this, I'm just holding down my mouse button and just moving the mouse. Just kind of makes it kind of feel like there's these things. We can kind of move that one a little bit. Well, that one's just not quite right. Let's do that again. You think that we should have some chains like going off into the darkness? Not sure where these went. Yeah, we can do like some chains going down. So what I would do is maybe we'll do some like coming off from the wall like this, and then well, let's change that a little bit. I'll show you guys how you can kind of do this. You want it to feel like it's bending around that, right? So here, and then something like that. And what we'll do is we'll just fade that off. I'll kind of show you how we'll do that. We'll do a couple of them here. Let me do one from the other side here. So I'll do one right off from the wall here. We can kind of well, we'll expand this out a little bit. Bring this over and then bend it down. Make this not seem quite so angular. And then all we have to do is just kind of like fade this out. That's a little bit too much of an angle there, so let's move this to something like that. And I'll actually go into I'm just going to load in that map module so that I have access to it. Because in there we will actually have this guy. What I'll do is I'll grab this color right here. And I'm just going to fade that in to something like this. Well, you can just kind of do it something like that, maybe there. And I'll lower down the opacity of this a bit. I'm going to bring this right over to the edge too. Very cool. Chains going down into the darkness. For some reason, these guys disappeared, so we can redo these. Maybe we'll do some of those whole skeletons. Something like this hanging out down there. Just lower down the opacity quite a lot. So you can kind of just barely see it. Very cool. All right, well, we're kind of winding down here. Do you guys have any questions, or is there any Anything that I could, anything that I did maybe that you weren't quite sure on how I did it? Um, let's see. We could probably grab some of these additional decorations as well. We might even want to do like some of these like scattered stones on the floor. Little bits of debris here and there. Maybe there was like some wooden elements in here at one time. I kind of feel like that this might be like a hole in the ceiling where sand and whatnot has fallen down in over the ages. Could even do like an archway maybe. Ooh, a chapel with rotten pews. That sounds kind of cool. Yeah, the little image that I used to fade out the chains. Yeah. So if you go to the forge, there's a there's a module on there that's included in. I think it's probably included in a lot of the all of the maps that we make here. They go into the forge. If you look up Smiteworks, you'll be able to find them and download them for free. Included in them sometimes is some additional elements. So if you go into the modules, I believe it's the FG 2019 map module. And in here we have, there's a couple of old maps that we created, but it will also give you access to, in your FG assets here, it'll pop up map module, and there's a couple of additional little images in here. This one is a great one to use. I use it for a lot of like shadows and things, fades like that. I think there's also like some of these old broken down crates and whatnot, so we can grab some of these things and start to put them around these pots. Yeah, maybe we'll make this like an old chapel or something. And I think what we'll do is, let me just grab, um, I'll just add in a little bit more shadow stuff before we call it a day here. I'm just going to lower down the opacity of this quite a lot. I'm just going to, that's a little bit too, yeah, that's okay. I'm going to do like the inside of these urns a little bit. And I'll do a little bit that's like coming off of these. I'll do like a large one kind of over this whole side. Create some nice little shadow elements like this. Do a little bit in here. Down in these corners. Maybe even do like a little bit of one from the archway here. Like cast in. And then I think I'll do a little bit along this edge here. Excellent. Howdy, Jiminy. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, we are winding down here. So, do you guys have any other questions, or is there anything else that I can help you with, or? So we made this entire map with just 3 layers, one for our walls, one for our adjustment colors, and then one painting layer. Lots of cool stuff here. You know what else we should do actually? Before I go, let's add a little bit of a shadow for this chain here. Make this a little bit smaller. I'll give it a little bit more feeling like it's on the floor here. I think we'll just move this in a little bit. Tighten that up. Yeah, thank you. No problem. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today. Hopefully you guys learned a bit and figuring out some cool ways that you can interact with the map system, build some new and interesting locations. I'll just give everyone another minute here if in case there's any questions. Yep, tonight there will be Fabled Dice, 9 p.m. So make sure if you're around to come check that out. I'll be back this next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we run till just about 6 usually. So if you guys are around, I would love to have you back. Thanks everyone for joining me. Yeah, this is the Dune rule set. Awesome, everyone. Well, thanks again. I hope you all have a great